Hello, thanks for attending this session. My name is Chris Sarcletti, and today we're going to be covering workplace violence awareness and physical security at Alliant Credit Union. As a subtitle, I've included unique considerations for a medium-sized workplace, which I'm excited to get into because most of my experience was at larger organizations, and coming into a medium-sized 700-person organization from the numerous thousands of people organizations I've had experience with over the last 20 years. And some different responsibilities, which has been exciting. My name is Chris Sarcletti, and I am a business continuity professional. I've worked in all aspects of business continuity for over 15 years at 4 different organizations, predominantly in the financial services industry. I've been at Allstate Financial, been at CME Group, BMO Harris, and now at Alliant Credit Union. At Alliant, I'm responsible for business continuity overall. We've actually recoined our team business resilience recently within the last month, and the things that we're responsible for include all business continuity planning, disaster recovery, life safety, and physical security. So at a smaller organization, I've always had aspects of physical security, but now we really have control of that. And today what we're going to talk about is our physical security program and some of the things that we've seen, and also workplace violence awareness, which is really the main piece here. Workplace violence awareness includes run, hide, fight guidance, and it's something that, unfortunately is a threat we all face in this day and age. And this is something that I wanted to make sure to roll out. I did it at my last place of employment, and it was very successful doing it throughout the country on webinars, in-person meetings, and whatnot. And here at Alliant, we're launching this. We have launched this recently, and it's an exciting step forward for us. Let me tell you a little bit about Alliant Credit Union and who we are. So we're a Chicagoland-based digital credit union, and we have customers across the country. I'm going to get into what digital is later on a little bit, but we're a fintech company. So we compete with companies like Alliant Bank and stuff like that, where we're providing high rate savings, good mortgage rates and whatnot, and we have a completely digital footprint. We have had branches in the past, and as part of the response to COVID-19. We'll get into that. So we no longer have branches at all, actually, as of 2 weeks ago. So we are a digital credit union. We have over 700 employees. We're a member-owned financial institution. That kind of goes with being a credit union, and we're focused on not making members and making their banking experience easier. We're a large credit union. In 2018, we passed the 10 billion mark. And we're the 8th largest credit union in the United States. And so if you're familiar with credit unions, when you get into the really large ones, a lot of them are tied to armed forces and whatnot, like the Navy Federal Credit Union and some others. So we're a very large organization, at least with the bucket where we fall. We also have a really good place to work. Gallup's rated us a Great Workplace Award for many years. And we were 78th on Fortune's list of the country's 100 best medium workplaces in 2019. That's part of the reason I'm here. I was actually uniquely interested when I saw this opportunity to work for a credit union, which I hadn't worked at, even though I'd been in financial services, and then also to work at a place that was so highly regarded, because I was happy at my previous place of employment, but working at a smaller organization that's not publicly traded and has different nuances has been exciting for me over my first 7 months. A few other things: we were named the best credit union of 2018 by Money Magazine, and we're really a forward-thinking organization as a fintech organization. And just recently, Great Place to Work honored us as one of the best workplaces in Chicago. We were actually number 3, which was exciting. A couple other pieces. We have over 600 employees. We're actually closer to 700 now. 2 office locations. We'll see if that continues. Over, nearing 450,000 members and assets of over 11 billion. So let's talk a little bit about physical security at Alliant. So we're a medium-sized institution and we're digital. And the approach to physical security is markedly different than at larger organizations that I've experienced. I've worked at, like I said, a lot of large organizations where you work with a lot of different teams. What's been exciting at Alliant is they've been able to get a lot more done without having to go through as many levers of different approval. There still is approval, but it's a smaller organization. So there's lots of collaboration. I particularly work closely with physical security facilities and business. Those are the place, whether it's cameras, badging, online profiles, which are increasingly becoming important as we go to a work from home scenario. My first 3 months, I spent a lot of time on our branch security because we did have a branch. Well, we had 2 branches. We had one larger branch that was full service, and that was in our building where we had most of our employees. Well, as we'll get into, and I updated this presentation as recently as yesterday because we're in a interesting time in our lives and in the world. And we had changes recently which changed the things I need to focus on for security, namely the closing of our branch. Our branch is, but the main branch will most of the operations out of. So that's a big. What I'm looking at, Alliant, is someone needs to kind of take the reins on pushing these initiatives forward, but they need to work closely with their partners to ensure our policies are in line with each other. That's important. For a small organization, we expect efficient, and we're expecting that employees are going to read these policies, and they aren't going to be reiterated 5 times. So the employee handbook, physical security procedures, an employee emergency handbook. We have to make sure this stuff is in line with each other. We recently updated our employee handbook, which is the responsibility of human capital or human resources, but we call it human capital. We need to make sure that was in line with some of the stuff in the physical security procedures manual that I've created for the organization in our employee emergency handbook. Because of the nature of our business, being a smaller organization, a culture of security is important. It's important from both information security, of course, and I'm not responsible for information security, but that's a piece, and sometimes those things with identity and access management and others tie in with the physical security piece. So that culture is important. Layers of resources, like 3 lines of defense, are not as clearly defined in an organization like Alliant due to its size as in larger organizations. And enforcement of procedures needs to be emphasized through training. This has been one of the biggest things I've taken. So my last place of employment, we really had that defined 3 lines of defense with internal audit, the second line, and the first line. And it was, that's also an expensive model to put in place, but it's necessary, especially at larger organizations. We can't do that at smaller organizations. You can't replicate something of a business of a size that, the size of some of these larger organizations, just due to the cost. So we do have those lines, but they're more blurred, and there's going to be more gray areas on responsibilities. And that's why enforcement of the procedures through training is really, really important that people pay attention to this, because it is on the individual employee to do things like not leave stuff on the printer or look out for tailgating and whatnot, because we can't have, we can't employ security people to be standing throughout the building all over the place and whatnot. There's a lot of different things here. So that culture is important, and it's something that we really have to emphasize through training. Some of the components of our physical security program. So let's start here. One of the biggest piece that really honestly was part when I started 7+ months ago that I needed to really get my hands around was the branch security, because even though I had some security responsibilities in my previous place of employment at a branch bank, I was not responsible for branch security. And obviously a large bank like BMO, where they have a lot of branches, and we have a whole department that deals with this. So sometimes I would help with incidents that impacted a branch, but we only had 2 branches. So I needed to get my hands and feel comfortable with branch security, robbery procedures, locking things up, threatening phone calls it's trying to extort money, etc. So that was very important. But as you'll notice, that's actually no longer on here. And it's no longer on here because as part of Alliant's long journey to become a digital institution, which has been something they've been engaged in for years, we were left with 2 branches, but there was no interest in really getting rid of those. But with COVID-19 response, we're longer going to conduct branch on our 2 branches, and they decided that they weren't going to reopen them. They've already made that decision. We haven't even reopened our business yet. We're working mostly from home, but we decided we're not going to reopen the branch business because 97% or something of our revenue comes through the digital channels, and we had that as a extra piece for our members. But in addition to taking our ATMs offline, taking them out of our building, I should say, we also decided to just cease having a physical branch location any longer, and we no longer will. So it's completely a digital institution. So that was a big piece because I needed to spend a lot of time on branch security due to the obvious threats of getting robbed, things like that. And, that's there's people that are coming in, accessing the building, using the ATM, etc. So that is no longer a concern. So the physical security program components that we have and we're responsible for: a clean desk policy. I was surprised that I was responsible for this, but the clean desk policy gets into a lot of, if you print information, it's information that, it has private information on there for our members about their financial transactions, and numerous other pieces of information, social security numbers, etc. So we really enforce through training that information needs to be destroyed. It needs to be put in the bins that are labeled as such. We even try and emphasize, don't print it if you don't need to, and use secure printing, which is based on your ID. So you got to go to the printer and type in your ID, and then it'll print. Because that was an issue that's been identified during audits, and it's just a good business practice. So this was more emphasized than any place I've seen in my previous employment. Now with moving to a digital, digital, but I mean from moving to a work from home stance, we're not allowing people to print a lot of information at home because, for obvious reasons, information security reasons, disruption of data and whatnot. So printing is even less. So that's an adjustment, I think, like anything. Like beginning to use, to stop using checkbooks, beginning to stop printing stuff. It all is an evolution that I'm noticing as we go through this whole experience together of working remotely. Cameras, badging, and tailgating, that's another piece. So security cameras that we do have at our building, we have those in place. Badging and tailgating was pretty important. It's pretty important because we don't have a lot of security. We have a guard that comes at night, and that's it. Because we have control of our one building that we have. Our other building was in a rented facility, so we're a tenant. They have more security because the building has someone as a front desk and whatnot. But we're probably not going to use that building going forward, and we're definitely going to have less people in it. So the main building we have responsibility for. So we do have a receptionist, but we don't have security there every day. We have security at night, and that's it. So therefore, our security measures are our badging system and asking people not to tailgate and emphasizing that, very much so through training. So that's been pretty important about, if you see people walk through the building with no badge, somebody didn't give them a visitor badge, we really try to crack down on that and do it on almost an employee by employee basis. So that's a big piece. Life safety. So evacuation drills, which we do at our buildings, shelter in place too. And then this year we rolled out CPR training and an AED device program. So we installed some AED devices and offered CPR training. Unfortunately, the AED devices were put in place, but the CPR training is still waiting to get to take place because of COVID-19. We were unable to, our building went to remote before we were able to actually complete those specific courses. Workplace violence, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, of course. Roll out workplace violence as we speak. We'll talk about that more, about workplace violence program, which we didn't have in place. Data center security, responsible for that. I'm going to get on online profiles in a minute, but how's our man procedure, exercises, and audits to make sure that we're compliant with these items. So online profiles, I added this in yesterday. I added it in yesterday because I had a couple of conversations over the last month about this. But as we've reverted to working from home with 95% of our employees, with the expectation that we're probably going to do that for likely the remainder of the year, and going forward, we'll definitely have more people in the office than 5% or so, but maybe we're going to be a 30 to 50% in-office company with 50 to 70% remote. We don't know that at this point, but things are looking like we're going to have a lot more remote workers than we did before. Maybe we had 10 or 15% or 20% at most in the past. It makes online profiles a lot more important. So that means having your picture in Outlook, in Skype if you use it, or Microsoft Teams or whatever you use, in SharePoint, because in some cases, how would we even know what someone looks like? I guess one side could say, does that really matter? I mean, I don't know if it matters or not, but it does matter from an identity and access management, even knowing that someone actually is an employee of Alliant. I mean, it's good, and it's good to connect that, a name with the face and whatnot. I think that is important. So what we're trying to do from a security perspective is control this. In the past, people could load the badge photo they got taken would then be their, they could use that, but they could use whatever they want. Now we're trying to lock that down and really say, no, you're going to use your badge photo as your online profile. For some reason that doesn't work for you, we're going to provide you with specific guidelines, and you're going to have to send it to this specific group, and they're going to load it into Active Directory, which will feed these different systems. And we feel like that'll make for a little bit better interaction too, to know when someone's sending you a Skype message or whatever, that you can see their face and whatnot, and kind of at least to some degree build some of that community of knowing who someone is. So that's taken on a recent effort to try and get this in place. So as I mentioned, large workplace concerns versus medium-sized concerns. So I have a lot of experience at a lot of big organizations, and to me, Alliant seems small, but I understand from the grand scheme of things, 700 isn't small, so it's medium. But we're looking at thousands of employees versus hundreds, and it just it's a lot different type of organization, much different type of organization, a lot more accountability from what I've seen, and a lot more responsibility. It's a member organization. We're not publicly traded. I'm still trying to completely digest as working for a credit union, the member versus customer, but it's a member organization. So we share a lot of information with our members that in previous, my previous lives, you would never share that information with your customers, to let them know that we're having these issues. We actually, it's supposed to be transparent to share a lot of information. Digital focus versus physical location. As I mentioned, we're completely digital now. We weren't before. That's how we service our members. So that's been an interesting journey for me to come to something like this. And also, like now with everyone working remotely, that's another piece. We're national. We're not global. We're local. So we're local, but we're national with our members. But we're local, but we're national. We have people all over the country. We do have members in other countries too. but we don't have global concerns. So from a business continuity perspective and whatnot, being a digital institution and not having physical locations throughout the country has made it a little bit easier from hurricane seasons and whatnot, that I don't need to drop everything and jump on. And I don't need to worry about global unrest, at least, I mean, as a citizen, I absolutely do, but as from a work perspective, I don't have to be concerned about some of the things that are going on in different regions of the world. Impact us. So that's been a big change too, a big change. There's no finger pointing. It's your job. It's all our jobs. This has been particularly important regarding security, as I'd mentioned. It's easy to get things done, but we need to kind of get it right. What does that mean? It just means that we have a lot of accountability. There isn't a lot of, we can't flip this to a lot of different people. So if you see something, you say something and fix it. And we wear a lot of hats. I think, I've worn a lot of hats at other companies, especially in business continuity. I feel like you're always wearing a lot of hats. I feel like I put a couple more on in a way. Now I want to talk through workplace violence training, kind of what we've done here at Alliant. So we didn't have workplace violence training or awareness in place when I started. I even mentioned it during my interview process that this is something that I was proud of, that I'd worked on in the past, that I saw a lot of value in. And so when I came in, I put it on my radar as something to do, hopefully in the first year. We've had a lot of starting and stopping with this, mostly because of the coronavirus response, which forced me and my team, I have a team of 2 people that report to me, to drop a lot of stuff because we needed to focus on that, like many of us that are listening to this have. But I've been able to pick this back up the last 6 weeks to finish it off. And what we've done is we've engaged with key partners to gain their support, and that's essential to implementing this program. That's going to be important if you ever put workplace violence training in place. There are a lot of concerns here. There's human capital concerns, legal concerns, and some communication concerns. At least there's those. When I rolled this program out at my previous place of employment, really it was important to dot those I's and cross those T's. Otherwise, things could get stopped in their tracks. When I've provided this awareness training, I've received lots of questions, and you live and you learn, right? That have made me step back and really think about how to approach this. And my contact information is at the back if anyone ever wants to contact me to discuss or pick my brain. But really, it comes down to a lot of them were human capital and legal. I've been asked questions in the past about whether I can bring a weapon into work, specific questions pertaining to guns, specific questions pertaining to pepper spray, legal questions, a lot of different things that get into state law, amendment rights, a lot of things. So it was very important to make sure that human capital and legal understood the content that was going to be presented, what it was based on, which is the Department of Homeland Security guidance, and then actually coming up, and I think this is really important, frequently asked questions. Write down the questions, get your small group together, write down the questions you think you might get asked, and get the canned answer from human capital and legal. Because you don't want to be out there giving this guidance to people and go off the cuff on a question about guns and bring them into a building or something like that. It's very important to have those answers for those sensitive questions ready. I mean, I'm the kind of person that would love to just engage and talk about this, but that's just not a good idea when it comes to this topic. So I think the frequently asked questions was very beneficial, and I've put that in place here at Alliant also. So if we do receive a question, we know how we're going to respond to it for those handful of sensitive questions, and then we can always go offline and I can say, look, I really need to talk to human resources or human capital or legal, and I'll get back to you. Because it often gets into employee relations policy, and sometimes gets into, law. Like, some states have different laws pertaining to these things. Corporate communications was a third partner, not as essential as human capital and legal, but want to make sure that the message is consistent with corporate policy and values. In doing this, I think I started looking at workplace violence stuff 7 or 8 years ago, not in my previous place of employment, but before that. I've seen a massive to talk about and discuss. Being able to use the term fight when it comes to run, hide, fight, to go ahead and show that video, which at another company, if I would have shown that video, I would have had a big problem. So I think, unfortunately, because we've had more incidents in the places we live, work, eat, go to school, study, people have realized we can't be, our number one concern can't be to make people feel uncomfortable. Maybe they need to feel uncomfortable. We need to provide the content to them and provide them with these tools so that they can be best equipped to deal with these situations if they do ever face them. So building the program and the program rollout, DHS and FEMA standards and guidelines were leveraged. We want the content and message to be consistent with the content being provided by the federal government. I think this is really important. I have been in a few discussions in the past, like, well, this state likes to do it this way. I'd heavily suggest not doing that. Otherwise, you could end up with lots of different flavors of this, and you want to have consistency. If you're a global company, then you have to step back and really look at how you're going to handle it globally, because the fight term is not used globally in a lot of jurisdictions, or a lot of countries, I should say. That's a big consideration. But we want to make sure that we're echoing the guidance that's provided by the government. It doesn't mean we have Alliant specific content in here, but we're not telling people they should handle it differently than how the government tells people to handle active shooter situations. So we added some Alliant specific content, but like I said, we want to echo federal government guidance. Through this process, we developed working relationships with local law enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security. I think this adds additional credibility. I've worked with the DHS protective security advisors for a while, and I think it helps bring in extra credibility, helps you be able to lean on them, helps your program. Well, I've had local law enforcement in Chicago in the past come in and be present during these sessions. I've had the Department of Homeland Security protective security advisors say a few words at times. Obviously, these people are busy. They can't come to every session, but every now and then they can. I even had the DHS protective security advisor say, hey, I can come to one of your executive meetings and just talk about like the importance of this. So finding those relationships and using them where you can, I think are good. We need to determine the format that would be best for training and delivery at Alliant. So we need to figure out what works for this organization. In my previous experience doing this, I do feel like in-person is really good with this content because it's a touch-feel thing. I really think that's important, but we have to put on the hat of reality, and you aren't going to be able to deliver your message to as many of your colleagues if you only have in-person sessions. This is particularly important during these times when so many people are working remotely. So for us, we need to do switch gears. We needed to go to remote completely. Doing a webinar like I am today. So that is where we went. I had plans to do in-person sessions at both of our facilities a handful of times. Would be optional, but people could attend, but I wanted to provide enough opportunity where everyone could come through there at some point. And I still plan to do that in the future. I had to drop that completely. It's just not possible. We don't have people in the office. So we went to a remote session. So we recorded a session, we put it on our internal training mechanism portal where we deliver training to people, and made it available to them. Some of our other concerns is training versus awareness. Well, I know I've used the term training a lot, and these items can be used interchangeably. I think it's just important to remember that sometimes the word training has connotations like, you told me to do this, so it's going to work. Well, obviously, that's not the case with run, hide, fight. It's more of an awareness. You're providing tools to people to have in their tool if ever faced with the situation. Present versus train of Alliance, we kind of, went the train presenter route. At large organizations, you could think about train the trainer. However, even in my last place of employment, we did not go that route. If you're going to do train the trainer, you need to make sure that the people that are giving this training, that you're comfortable with how they're delivering the message, because it needs to be the same each time. It gets into that frequently asked question piece that I mentioned, and it gets into, my wife definitely doesn't think I'm funny, but I kind of think I am sometimes, and I like when I'm giving a presentation to give a few jokes. But I can tell you what, during workplace violence awareness training, it's not the time to make jokes. You just can't. You got to be to the point, serious, maybe even a little intense. It's a very unique topic to cover. None of us know if they're delivering this awareness session, if people in the audience may have been impacted by something like this, or a loved one was or is. So it's a very sensitive topic, and it's important that whoever's delivering this keeps to the script and delivers it with the seriousness with which it requires. Access to training and availability, in-person versus remote. We kind of talked about this. I think in-person is important for this, but no matter what, you're not going to be able to get to everyone in person. Even at my last place of employment, we did a lot of in-person sessions, which cost more money. I had to travel across the country and whatnot, but it was effective. And I feel like we always got more questions in person and more dialogue. But we also needed to augment that with, I did a lot of Skype sessions so I could get to more people. So it's ultimately going to be a mixture. In the current environment, there is no in-person for most of this stuff. It's going to be remote, video, things like that. So it's a, hopefully in the future, when there's more people in the office, and people are comfortable coming into the office, there can be more of these in-person sessions, but right now we're in the remote. And I've talked about the frequently asked questions. I think that's really important to have those questions vetted out. It also makes the presenter look a little bit more confident and prepared. And it doesn't mean they need to memorize them. It's just, you kind of know if this question gets asked, that the answer is going to be, well, I need to discuss that with human capital and get back to you. Or we don't allow, weapons in the workplace. It's important to know what those answers are, because that can go down a path that might not be a good path to go down. So where are we today, and where are we going? We launched our digital workplace violence program just recently. We worked on it for the last 4 or 5 months, but again, we had planned to do it in person, and now we had to kind of revert back to doing it just remote, but it is now in play. We've updated our physical security training. We updated and expanded it. I'm going to talk just a little bit about that before I finish off. We strengthened the partnerships with our stakeholders. This really was beneficial to me in being a rather new employee, as I've been able to really build close relationships with human capital and legal. So that's been great. And we're balancing the needs of the organization and culture versus our security needs. Just trying to understand what we need to do as an organization. I added this in, just a couple days ago too. A changing environment requires flexibility. The COVID-19 response resulted in changes at Alliant that resulted in changes to our physical security program. And I think I've discussed them already. We closed our branches, big change there. I mean, 3 months ago, I did a tabletop exercise with the branch or 4 months ago, discussing very much about what would we do if someone came in and robbed us, because we were never been robbed, requesting cash when we're actually a cashless organization. And we had discussions like, I don't think people believe we don't have cash. If you say you're a branch, they think you have cash, no matter what you actually have. Well, now that's completely changed because we don't have any branches. The online profile piece, this is so fresh to me, but I can see the importance of it, and it's going to be more and more important. Even if you think about it, as a workplace, that's your identity. I mean, do you have a badge on your phone? I don't know. I mean, these are questions I'm asking myself. Well, what does that look like going forward? What we do have in place is this workplace violence program, which we're excited to have available for our employees. We also have a physical security and safety in the workplace training module. There is a link to that in the training in this module. It's a 7-minute voiceover video that covers all the physical security components. I mentioned that we have to really lean on training during for physical security in an organization this size. Well, this is a big piece for us. It's required for all new hires, and later this year we're going to make it required as an annual requirement. It covers all the pieces: tailgating, clean desk policy, confidential information, life safety, building evacuation procedures, emergency communications, like how do we communicate with people. We have Send Word Now, we have some other mechanisms, and workplace violence. So that isn't meant to be the workplace violence training, but we allude to it. It's kind of like our menu of what we have for security, talking about each piece, and we allude to the workplace violence training, but that's a separate module. It emphasizes see something and say something, and as I mentioned, it's going to be required of all staff. It says beginning in 2021, we're actually going to do that even sooner. So that's been a key piece for us to make sure we're getting to all of our employees. So, I wanted to thank you for attending this session. I really appreciate you taking the time to review this content. I am available for any kinds of questions. I've provided my email here, csarcletti@alliantcreditunion.com. If you have any questions, if you're trying to put a program in place, if you've recently taken on physical security, trying to watch workplace violence, have questions about any of these topics, I'd love to provide anything that I can that would help anyone that's trying to go down these paths. Thank you very much. Please be safe, stay safe, and thanks again.